The type of funding you take is really relevant to the business model that you have. I'm going to try to break down what kind of a good business model for VC money looks like, and what a bad one looks like, and what a better one for bootstrapping is. Um, so imagine you're selling to some customer segment. It doesn't really matter. Um, let's try to identify them. Let's go with something specific though. So let's say doctors, and it's helpful. Sorry about the clanking. It's helpful for them to be specific because then it's easier to advertise to them. And our value proposition is something they want to buy. You know, um, some doctor product. And the revenue stream, we have to know pretty much like what we earn per doctor. So let's say doctors are pretty valuable. So we get $500 per doctor that we sign up. That's either an upfront purchase that they only buy once, or they pay $50 a month for 10 months or whatever. We get 500. Um, so we're selling to doctors. Our cost structure is like it could be one of two things. We could either sort of actually we'll come back to the cost structure because it's tied into the channel. Um, the channel is really what makes the difference for how you should take investment. So if your channel here is word of mouth or organic growth, um, or I mean even in some cases search if you don't have a really strong content plan that you can throw money at, then you really don't have a way to efficiently deploy capital, right? There's nothing in your channel that you can do that you could put money in that will get you more doctors, with the exception of search. So what this comes down to is if search is a strong enough channel for you that you can acquire a new customer for, let's say, $300 per doctor to get them to sign up, then at that point you've got a profitable equation, right? So for every $350 you spend on search, you end up getting $500 out at the other end, sort of of the chart. And as long as your other costs are fixed, so let's say that you don't have salespeople, but instead you have a flat, whatever, $10,000 a month in salaries and technology and infrastructure. So those are just fixed costs, not Fox costs, fixed costs. Um, at this point, when you're at a small scale, you may be losing money because you can't bring these fixed costs down without firing everyone and crippling your service. But you don't have the money to spend on a ton of search to bring in the thousands of doctors that you would need to overcome this fixed cost and start making a profit. So this is an absolutely perfect scenario for bringing in investors. They can give you the capital that you need, and then you can spend it all on search. And sort of a month or 3 months or a year later, like you'll have even more money, and then you can really scale up the company. Some markets, though, aren't like this. For this to work, there usually has to be, well, ideally, an even better situation is where you've also got a network effect in play. So for every doctor that you get, it increases the value of your product or service. So let's say that you're not actually, that you're more of a doctor knowledge sharing network. So the doctors talk to each other and recommend things to each other and all of that. It's exclusive and elite, and you're still charging for it. But this means the more doctors there are, the more value they all get out of it. So as you get more and more users, it gets harder and harder for your competitors to enter the market because you've built up this network effect. And that could be a situation where it makes sense to take the money and really force the funding, even if you're, for example, losing money on every doctor that you acquire. So if it costs you $1,000 and you only get 500, that's definitely a loss in the short term. But if you're building up this network effect that'll give you a permanent advantage over all of your competitors, it can make a lot of sense. Here's another model that can use capital really, really efficiently, and we're seeing them do it. This is Zynga's. So they sell social games to everybody, teens especially, through viral sharing and display advertising. They make their money per user, and they've got this really, really strong network effect. Whereas their players grow, it increases the amount of peer pressure to keep everyone engaged, and it increases the amount of sharing to bring in new users. So every additional player they get adds very real value to Zynga. and they can acquire users at a variable cost, so they can pay for display ads as much as they want, and then they've got fixed development costs. So this is all of the ingredients that we were looking at before, where they can essentially throw an arbitrary amount of money into ads, into display ads, which will build up this key resource while also making them direct revenue. And the final one that we'll look at is basically Groupon, a daily deal site. It's a two-sided marketplace, so you've got two different what you can think of as customer groups, although the sellers don't actually pay. And they make money per buyer, so they can acquire the buyers scalably through display ads. This should be green. They can acquire the buyers scalably through display ads with as much money as they want, and they can acquire the sellers, the small businesses, scalably through salespeople. So both of those are variable costs, and in addition to directly creating revenue, they also build up these really defensible key resources, and then their infrastructure is a fixed cost. One of the interesting things about Groupon's model in particular is that it's localized. So unlike something like Zynga, which covers all of Facebook and thus most of the world, Groupon needs their salespeople to kind of be on the ground. So they have to go a country at a time or a region at a time. And this is meant, because this key resource is so powerful, that when they enter a new territory, oftentimes they'll find that another startup has copied their model. And for example, Germany or even within the U.S. in different states, like Atlanta, Georgia, had several of its own, and all major cities did. And it was so hard to overcome this key resource that they found it easier just to buy the other startup and kind of start with their network of buyers and sellers, and then go from there, scaling up rather than start from zero. So maybe that actually means that there's another channel in here, which is purchasing competitors. And that gets them a whole bunch of buyers and a whole bunch of sellers all at once. And it definitely costs money, but it seems to be working well for them. Basically, the point I want to make is that some companies can use money really efficiently. They can turn it into more money immediately, or they can build up a long-term advantage over time. However, some companies don't have this structure, and there's simply nothing they can do with money. So it's worth thinking about kind of which situation you're in, and also before you start or while you're still early on, what sort of company you'd like to build, because you still have the option to change it. So if you're on a track where you're going to need VC and you don't want it, or where you can't effectively use VC and your dream is to do that, then now's the time to, I guess, tweak your model to make more or less use of money.